Let's get it.
All right, welcome back to another Wisco Fanatics. This is our next Tuesday episode. All of our Green Bay Packers shows are moving to Tuesday this year, so we can get our thoughts going on the games earlier in the week and give people a little bit more time to consume the content that we're going to have coming throughout the week. So here we are. We are back. Really looking for our first show for 2024 season. The draft stuff is kind of still like the in-between part of the season. So now we are officially moving towards 2024. And we're going to start with the preseason primer, and we're going to talk about a bunch of position groups and the position battles that we're looking for from there, as well as talking about the new kickoff rules, which Bryant is going to go through with us. So we're going to get into it.
Welcome to another live episode of the Wisco Fanatics Show, where we discuss the Packers, Bucks, Brewers, Badgers football, and basketball from an optimistic perspective. Wisco Fanatics is brought to you by Cardboard Legacy, Wisconsin's most complete sports card shop. Buy, sell, grade, and consign all at their location in Oshkosh.
All right. So welcome back. We are back. And like I said in the intro, switching to Tuesdays this year. So Tuesday. Hopefully we get everything going sooner, earlier in the week this year, so we give people time to listen to it on the podcast side. If you can't catch the shows live, they will be available on podcasting apps, YouTube, Spotify. Wherever you get podcasts, the show will be available there. If you can't catch it live, you can always rewatch it on YouTube and Facebook, which is where we are. So, Christopher, welcome. So we're going to start off kind of a little bit of an icebreaker, and we're going to have our guy who covers special teams for us. We asked Bryant to look into the new special teams, the new kickoff rule, and kind of let us know what the gist of it is. And I have done zero research on it, so I'm going to let Bryant explain it to somebody who has no idea what's going on with it. So no pressure.
Yeah. It's actually pretty interesting. There's going to be a lot of strategy. Okay. For me, real quick, before I get into it, I think it goes one of two ways. You're going to see a lot of strategy, a lot of fun, a lot of return is going to work, or teams are going to say, they're going to get burnt by it and they're going to say, screw it. We're kicking it. Take it to the 30. We don't care. We'll see what happens by midseason.
Right.
So the way it works basically is the kicker will still remain where he's at, but the other 10 players for the defensive or the kicking off team will line up at the opponent's 40. So over the 50-yard line at the opponent's 40. And then the returning team will line up between the 30 and 35-yard line. So it's going to be interesting. That's your first part of strategy right there. Do you get up and only be 5 yards off of them that you have to block? Do you stagger, or do you take the 10-yard back so you can, that would allow you to do more pulls and stuff like that if you're trying to set up blocking plays, which are going to be a big part of this new strategy that I'll talk about here in a minute. So the liner will cook up, he'll be on his own 35, right? So he's going to kick off. No one can move. This is the only play in football now that no one can move it once the ball moves. It has sorry, I got distracted. So it's not until either the ball touches the ground or someone catches the ball, one of the a returner, or what I think will happen will be one of the two returners back there catches the ball. So the other rule with the receiving team is 9. They have to have at least 9 players between the 30 and 35, their own 30 and 35. For blocking. So that means they can have 2 people back, and that will be important. So there's some weird nuanced ones, like the kicker cannot cross the 50-yard line until the ball touches the ground at a player. So people were talking about, well, they might use a position player to kick it so they can try to get down there by the time the even person kicks it. Well, they can't cross the 50. So they could try a position kicker, but that position player better be really good at kicking the ball, because if they don't get it to the 20, so now what's going to happen? So if they kick the ball off, if the kicker kicks the ball off and it flies into the end zone, touches the end zone, it's a touchback to the 30. Okay? If it doesn't reach, now the target zone's between the 0-yard line and the 20-yard line. If the ball lands in that area, it has to be returned, no matter what. However, if it hits into that area and goes into the end zone and it's not returned, the receiving team only gets it to the 20-yard line. Now, if it hits in the landing zone and goes out of bounds, it's to the 40 like normal. Now, if the kicker kicks it and it lands short of the 20, it doesn't make it all the way to the 20, the receiving team gets it to the 40 as well. So I know originally originally the concern was, they're just going to try to squib it all the way through the end zone. Well, they're going to have to be pretty damn precise, because if they try to squib it and it hits before the 20, you're automatically at the 40. Or you have that tight window of 20 yards. I mean, 20 yards is a decent distance, but you better be damn good at landing it in that area to try to get it to roll into the end zone to pin them at the 20.
Without having to go out of bounds.
Exactly. So what I think we might see a lot of is some pop-up kicks trying to coffin corner maybe a little bit. That's going to be hard still, because if it goes out of bounds, it's the 20, and the receiving player might just, gamble at that point, let it hit the ground and see where it rolls. But there's no benefit to a lot of hang time, because the kicker has to stop at the 50, and the people can't take off until the ball is caught or hits the ground. So now they're going to have to see if they can line drive this thing into the 0 to 20 yard line. And that's why I think you're going to have almost every team is going to have two returners. That's the only way it works. Unfortunately for the Packers, that's kind of a little bit of a disadvantage for us, because that's going to they're always going to kick away from Keyshawn Nixon. I'll talk about that here in a second.
Okay. If the ball lands before the 20 and bounces in the 20, does it still go out to the 40?
Yep. If it touches the ground before the 20 yard line, it's to the 40. So that's why I think you're not going to see as many squib kicks as people were thinking. The one rule I could not find that I was trying to look into, well, what if they squib it, and since there's all those people lined up, it drills like one of our players or someone else's player? Like, there was some stuff that you can interpret it, but I think basically if that happens, it's going to be to the 40 yard line. They can't try to drill it into our players, from my understanding.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on. So the landing zone is the 0 to 20 yard line. That's the sweet spot. That's where the kicker wants it, because that means if the return team doesn't do anything with it, they only get the ball at the 20, or even worse, if they don't return it and they just pick it up and get tackled or whatever. Okay. So, and then before the 20 goes to the 40, on the fly into the end zone to the 30. XFL did to the 35, so that's why originally people thought it'd be the 35, but the NFL only did the 30. Now I could see if what happens, because this is like a 1 year rule, if people start booming it into the end zone, that's where the NFL will be like, all right, we're going to go to the 35 yard line. Because now you're talking 10, 15 yards of field. That's like one less first down a team needs to get. So think about it. If you start at the 30 yard line, some of these kickers need 20, 30 yards to have a legitimate shot at a field goal, depending on the situation of the game, right? So, so there's the basic rules of it. So there's no fair catch signals allowed, none at all. You cannot fair catch the ball. So, and then so if conditions cause the ball to fall off the tee twice, this is where it's kind of interesting. So you know how typically you'd have a player hold it? Well, since they're all going to be forward, now the kicker gets to get one of the kick tees, or the little sticks that holds it up. And what's going to happen is a referee is going to pick it up right away.
Oh, okay.
So, the ones they practice into the kick nets, they'll get to use that.
Okay.
So that's if it's windy or whatever. And if it's windy, this is going to be really interesting to see what happens. Like Chicago and stuff, it's going to be really funny to watch. Onside kicks are not allowed now until the fourth quarter. And to do an onside kick, you have to say you're doing an onside kick. So back in the days where the Colts pulled the Saints pulled the one off against the Colts in the Super Bowl, that's gone. That's no longer going to happen.
No surprises.
Yep. So penalties. So the setup zone, the interesting part is the setup zone will never move. Only where the ball is kicked from will change. So it's going to be interesting to see how they apply rules, and if anyone uses any kind of there's really no benefit, to be honest, because does it really matter? Not really. Maybe if you get a penalty and they're kicking off from the 50, that will give them more of a better chance to squib into the 20. But man, those people lined up at the 40 yard line and the 30 through 35 better be ready to watch out for a ball flying by their heads.
What happens if a player moves?
I think they'll count it as a penalty. Start. Yeah, I think it'll count as a false start. Okay. But however, so like with penalties now on special teams and stuff, you might see savvy coaches trying to get away with picks or something like that, because honestly, the penalty on it is not that consequential.
Yeah, I wonder, Cody asked how many more or less offsides calls there will be. And I think that's going to depend on. So it has to wait until the ball lands or is received.
Yep, caught. Yep.
So I mean, you're really going to be splitting hairs on that. I think almost like a guy trying to tag up on a fly ball, something like that.
How I imagine it's going to be. What I imagine it's going to be, the two receivers are going to line up probably about the 10 yard line, in between the sideline and the hash mark. are maybe right on the hash marks to make it, because it's easier to kick not out of bounds in the middle of the field. So they'll probably say, if I was a special teams coach, I mean, we'll see how it goes, but I'll probably put them on the hash marks and be like, if they want to try to kick it real hard on the outside, there's a higher percent that's going out of bounds. Let them do that. So that's where I kind of see some play into that. Now a safety kick is kind of interesting because the kick will be from the 20-yard line still, and the kicker will have the option to use a tee. So they can use a tee from the 20-yard line instead of a punt. So, and the crazy part is the landing zone's not going to change. So if they're punting from the 20, they better boot that son of a bitch, because otherwise they're getting it at the 40, from my understanding. So it'll be, we're really going to have to watch this in preseason and see how it's like reffed and how everything that comes out of it, because I think there's going to be some confusion. Obviously these players and the coaches and stuff are already practicing it, but it's pretty interesting. So it says the special teams working group will continue to work with the officiating department to examine any necessary approved rulings and or additional language that may be necessary to support the rule. So the part that's going to be really interesting to me, for me, the Packers, is I have a feeling they're going to put 2 returners back, and I'll talk more about this later when we do a preview, but I think that means that they'll probably kick away from Keyshawn Nixon, but
answers that question.
But yeah, but however, if you watch XFL at all, some people have pulled some pretty tricky end arounds and stuff on kicks. So you imagine Jaden Reed and Keyshawn Nixon back there, and all of a sudden you're running an end around, getting huge returns, and that's where you're like, okay, well, do we line them up on the 30 or the 35? Because if we're thinking of pulling this end around, we want to have more room for some blockers to pull away from where they kick it, and so it's going to be it's going to be really interesting. To me, I kind of envision it's going to be more like a running play, as to where they're trying to open holes and seal holes and stuff like that. So it's going to be fun to watch. It's definitely going to change the kickoff. Now, if everyone just starts booming into the end zone, it didn't really do anything other than starting at the 30 now, and you're probably going to see points tick up a little bit on average in the league. But the reason they're doing this is the XFL said that. So the NFL, it was like 6% of the plays, but 24% of the concussions happened on those plays. In the XFL, they went to this rule, and they didn't have, at the point they were doing this interview, they had 0 concussions on kickoffs. So, it's definitely different. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to watch it in the preseason. Kind of excited to see what the Packers actually show in the preseason, or if maybe they're going to kind of play it lame. Don't want to give away too many tricks in their bag, because there's really only so much you can probably do with it. But we'll talk about returners and stuff here in a little bit. But that's basically the rule. So your kicker, you want them to be able to hit between the 0 and 20. Preferably, if this is where we wish we had Mason Crosby again, because it was like he kicked it as hard as he could every time. It went to like the 3 or 4. That would probably be perfect. If you have a kicker like that, that's going to be perfect, because they're going to have trouble getting it to the 25, 30-yard line from there. So, so it's going to be interesting to see how that it's going to play a big. I'll talk about it when we talk about the kicking preview too, but I'll stop there and then I can get more into it later.
Apham said, I don't think the Wisconsin accents are thick enough. Bryant is from North Dakota, and Simons is up there in Alaska. Don't you know?
He's from Michigan, though.
He also said, get your Nixon jerseys now. It'll be really interesting to see, like you said, how they try to strategize it. Very interested to see maybe Rich Bisaccia earning his paycheck this year for the big time.
I'm gonna say this. Bryant, you owe Keyshawn Nixon an apology if he gets first team All Pro again this year, because now everybody's returning it.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll apologize, but he didn't deserve it last year, and I stand on that.
He did because of yards. It's just yards.
Yeah.
But
dude,
it was like a default.
Probably net 0
line from 5 yards deep.
It's net 0.
Okay. So Michael said, "Go Packers! Season can't get here soon enough. I can't wait to see this defense dominate. I expect many 35-10 games. I don't know if I go so far as say 35-10. I'll settle for some 35-20s.
That's some ass whoopings there, Michael.
I'm for it.
Steve said, I'm old school and skeptical of the new rule and rule changes like this. I hope I'm proven wrong, like the pitch clock. That turned out good.
Yes, it did.
That's fair. It's understandable. And then he thought that was funny. And then Steve replied with Wisconsin.
It's funny because right before you read off that thing in our chat, I wrote big.
Big. Oh,
Hey,
man. You just really lay it on thick. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go position by position. We're going to go through the depth chart, the preseason players on the depth chart, the names you'll hear during the preseason games, and then just some of the position battles that we're watching at each position. So we have all the position groups divvied up between the four of us. We'll say, the position groups that we have and the battle that we're watching. And if anybody else has any other ones to throw in there, throw them out there. So, if I'm going to start with quarterbacks, we have Jordan Love, Sean Clifford, and Michael Pratt. If somebody thinks that we're watching for Michael Pratt to challenge Jordan Love for the starting job, that's your prerogative. That's not the one I'm watching. But to give you an example, if you want to throw out a different one than what we have. Ifam says we call them sacks in KC, not bags. I call them bags.
Sacks.
Sack is a different thing.
No. I just I've never heard anyone say that.
I mean, I think of sack of potatoes, but then I think of a burlap sack and not a bag.
If you're going to the grocery store, I don't know. I've never heard anyone call it a sack.
Yeah, I definitely think of something that was hand woven.
Yeah, same.
I'm thinking of a sack. He agreed. All right. Okay, here Darian's getting to it. Darian said, I'm convinced that Michael Pratt to overtake Sean Clifford as quarterback too. So for the quarterback group, the position battle that I'm watching is going to be Clifford versus Pratt. Can Michael Pratt challenge Clifford for the backup spot? This will be the battle to watch for this year and probably next year to see if one of them can generate trade buzz as somebody would be interested in. Should say the example that I'm going to use is the Raiders. Not that I'm wanting anybody to get hurt, but just using an example. Say Gardner Minshew gets hurt in preseason, and they're like, "Hey, the Packers have a couple guys. Should we trade for one of those guys to back up Aiden O'Connell?" Which is a really embarrassing thing to say because Sean Clifford is better than him, and he was in college. So should we trade for Sean Clifford and start him over Aiden O'Connell like we already should have? But that's an example to see if they can potentially generate some trade buzz and see if Brian Gutekunst can get a better rate on return than he got in his pick. Steve asked the question, with Pratt signing in the draft, what is the likelihood he could be cut and placed on practice squad? I think it's possible. Honestly, what I think is going to happen is I think he's going to be the emergency QB for the season. So it's they have the 53-man roster, and then they can have 3 other players that are emergency players that don't count. And I think that's what Michael Pratt will be. I think he'll be that emergency quarterback so that we don't have to have Jaden Reed playing quarterback if Love and Clifford get hurt in the same game. Sean Clifford going to be going back to cooking fish and chips with the new QB. We'll see. There's people that wanted Sean Clifford starting by week 3 last year. So Ron said Clifford has an advantage for backup, but Pratt will most likely be picked off practice squad. Yeah, that's fair.
He wasn't picked till the 7th round. I don't know if anybody's really jumping at the opportunity to take him. That's just my opinion.
It's really going to depend on if people have injuries happening or things of that nature. So I think it's possible. But like I said, I think he's going to occupy that that emergency QB. All right, running backs.
Hi, that's me. How we doing? So we have a changing of guard at running back. We've had Aaron Jones for the last several years since 2017, and obviously everybody knows he left town over some contract disputes, and we brought in a guy named Josh Jacobs. I do not expect to see Josh Jacobs very much in the preseason. Maybe just some few. Actually,
Turbo Farm. I like that. I like it.
A terrible comparison, to be honest with you. He's much faster than Favre. But I don't expect to see Josh Jacobs a lot. Maybe just to get him used to some game day contact here in week 2 or maybe some week 3 stuff because they have that extra week before the season starts. But A.J. Dillon, Marshawn Lloyd, that's going to be a big-time battle. A.J. Dillon obviously took the very, very team-friendly deal because they weren't even going to sign him, and they ended up bringing him back basically listen, if we like you, we'll keep you. Otherwise, we're going to cut you for free, so thanks. And the Packers used some high draft capital on Marshawn Lloyd out of USC. Now, A.J. Dillon has 597 carries, 2,428 yards, and 16 touchdowns in his young career. He is 86 of 110 on attempts and completions, 763 yards, 2 touchdowns. He has 2 fumbles receiving and 1 fumble rushing. Now, Marshawn Lloyd's a very explosive player. He didn't get as many touches as he probably should have been in college. He was at South Carolina, switched over to USC, a very talented offense over there in USC, a very good play caller. He chokes in big-time games, but he's still a very good, very talented offensive play caller. So, in my opinion, this is definitely the battle I'm going to be watching. I mean, there's other guys we could watch, like Emmanuel Wilson. He's the new Patrick Taylor. I'm sorry. It is what it is. Marshawn Lloyd is not going to get the touches early on. I think Dylan ends up making this roster. I think Dylan, just because he's a much better pass blocker, he's been in this offense, he's been around this team, he's going to get the touches early. And then I think eventually when Marshawn Lloyd's talent and his explosiveness end up being inevitable and he learns the offensive playbook a little bit better later in the year, he's going to take over those touches. But I do see a scenario where Josh Jacobs, A.J. Dillon, and Marshawn Lloyd end up getting touches all season long just to keep everybody fresh, just like they did with the wide receiver.
David, welcome back. Darian said, I'm thinking Marshawn Lloyd will be the new Aaron Jones with more toughness running the ball.
He fumbles the ball way more than Aaron Jones, so I do not see that situation. I'm just going to say that right now. We do not need to compare everybody to former players. That's just my opinion. I understand why we do it, but Marshawn Lloyd is a different type of player than Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones had the side-to-side quickness, and he ran tough. Marshawn Lloyd really is just a north-south guy. He doesn't have the side-to-side quickness that Aaron Jones has.
He's got some.
He's got a little bit, but, dude, Aaron Jones is elite, bro.
Yeah, I understand.
Aaron Jones is elite.
Aaron Jones is the human pinball machine.
Yeah.
He agrees. Yeah. Dylan's pass pro is solid.
Lloyd will need to shore up his fumbling before he could ever get in that conversation. The one thing Lloyd has right away on Aaron Jones is long speed and long stamina. Stamina. Yeah. He can get to the end zone. So,
Steve said Dylan looks as fit as ever. Hopefully, the team goes more gap runs to maximize the save of the backs. Ephraim said Jones had longer strides too.
Couldn't have been that long. He's only 5'9".
Okay. All right. Let's move from running backs like to tight ends.
Yeah, I think to me the top 3 are probably pretty set between Musgrave, Kraft, and Sims. I think they're all going to make the roster pretty easily. I think Sims showed a lot in his limited time last year to kind of back up those two in case one of them goes down. After that, I think it's kind of interesting. Tyler Davis coming off an ACL injury last year, but the year prior he had the most special team snaps, so that might be a place where he could be brought back pretty easily. Then there's also the question of with no longer having Josiah DeGuara, do we want to insert Henry Pearson in like that H-back fullback role? So if he can show that he's part of it's not like a popular thing or something I expect, but I think it's a possibility. Other than that, you have a couple like UDFA guys, Messiah Winston. That dude's big. Have you seen his size? He's 6'7", 259. Like he's a big boy.
A big boy.
He's a big boy. And then second-year player Joel Wilson, who was waived from the Saints and the Bills, and the Packers picked him up last year in the middle of the season.
Alrighty, yeah, it'll be interesting to see that Pearson, Tyler Davis is interesting because I'm wondering, and I think that's going to come down to special teams more so than the offense.
Which is why I think Tyler Davis has a leg up, but
I see, and I think even with that new kickoff rule, that I think Pearson could potentially have a role if they think he's a better blocker.
I think if they can find a spot for him,
yeah,
in the offense, then he could take that spot. But I don't know if they necessarily maybe cut out that part of the offense or what have you.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on for sure. David said no more DeGuara. That's the important part. Man, I wanted DeGuara to happen.
Yeah, like too.
He would have like a couple like really good plays where he's like, there you go. That's what we've been waiting to see. And then it was like, there's plays where it's like, I'm gonna pretend I didn't just see that.
Was it
DeGuara over Mullet Man any day of the week?
Oh man. Was it him last year where he just like stood there during a kick attempt?
Yes.
The dude just ran.
Yep.
That's all I remember from him last year.
April, I don't think this is ever happening. Lucas Van Ness is not going to tight end. He's going to be the next JJ Watt.
Hey, JJ Watt went to tight end once upon a time, and you compared him to JJ Watt. You compared him to JJ Watt.
I did, and I will continue to do so. Ron said it depends on how well Davis comes out of the ACL. That's totally fair. Cody said it's a big test for Musgrave. I only know it's only year 2, but hopefully he finally gets healthy again. I think a little bit of that
string of bad luck though, like
a torn,
exactly.
It was kind of bad luck,
kidney. I mean, that's not a normal injury.
Yeah,
but he had injury history in college too, so I think that's what Cody.
That's true. Good point.
So, speaking of injury history, I'm not going to tolerate any Christian Watson slander because when he's on the field, he has the most wide receiver 1. If you want to get locked into that potential of anybody on this team, it's not close, in my opinion. Even
he's the most talented receiver we have.
Yes, that I agree. Yes. Yep. So I'm going to list these players. I have 11 wide receivers to list for the preseason roster. Do not get caught in the order. I said this a whole bunch last season. You've got to get out of the fantasy football depth chart mindset of we need a wide receiver 1 because the Packers have clearly not been focusing on that because they want to have a bunch of guys who can be a wide receiver 1 any given week because it puts pressure on the defense to not be able to like, okay, we take this guy away and their offense is crippled.
So Alex McGill, wide receiver 1.
I know. Your fantasy football draft is coming up soon, so I know you're thinking about wide receiver 1s.
Alex Magoo, baby.
So he's on the list.
Why do I feel like he's trying to get an injury settlement?
So James said preseason is so close.
That wasn't his idea. That was Matt LaFleur's idea, I think.
I know, but now he keeps getting injured. He's probably like, screw this, just give me some money and I'll be out of here.
He's number 1 while on the field. Yes, he is. Like I was rewatching some of the highlights from the run that the Packers went on, and the touchdown catch he had against the Chiefs is still stupid. That's such a crazy play from Love and Watson, both of them. So again, don't get caught up in the order, but Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Bo Melton, Malik Heath, Samori Toure, Alex Magoo, Grant Dubose, Julian Hicks, and Dimitri Stanley. So now out of this group, Ron said Watson is so much more than straight speed, touchdown machine when not fighting the injury, 100%. And that's part of why the Packers completely redid their strength and conditioning staff. And they sent Watson and Eric Stokes to UW-Madison to actually have like special testing done on hamstrings and stuff like that to figure those out. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot going on there behind the scenes that we only get to see little bits of. But the position group or the positional battle that I'm watching within the wide receivers is I'm really looking at that like 7, 8, and 9 area. So the 3 that I have listed there are Samori Toure, Alex Magoo, and Grant Dubose. So my first question is Samori Toure going to make the team? That's my first question. And then my other one after that is could Magoo or Grant Dubose possibly sneak a spot and steal a spot on the team? So it's going to be 6 wide receivers for sure. But do we get into a position where they maybe roster 7? So the 6 that I have listed as locks: Watson, Dobbs, Reed, Wicks, Melton, and Heath.
I don't have Heath as a lock. Like I think he's good, and I think more than likely he'll make it, but I don't have him as a lock.
Yeah, Heath would be 6 for me for sure.
Yeah.
So it depends on what Grant Dubose does if he's healthy.
I don't think they'll carry less than 6. I don't think they're going to go with only 5 wide receivers.
So I think 6 for sure.
6 for sure, and maybe a 7th. Grant Dubose is stuck on the practice squad. Yeah, and I think honestly the Packers would rather see what they have in Dubose than to try to stick another year of development into Toure.
Yeah,
that's my opinion. 100%. I'm
not
100%. But we'll see. Erdarian said I've been more impressed with Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks for late-round picks that have panned out, especially with their route trees.
I have something I want to bring up while we're talking about wide receivers.
Go for it.
Since there's going to be 2 kick returners, it'll be interesting to see if one of them is able to create a roster spot for themselves just by being good at returning kicks, because we already know that Keyshawn Nixon's 1A, right? Who's going to be the guy next to him? And there's no expectation of who it's going to be. People are saying Ballantyne. It could end up being a guy like Toure.
I got some people here for you in a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brian's got kick
That's just my 2 cents.
Lucas Van Ness.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll see in week 16, James. Afam said, I expect Heath to have added 10 to 15 pounds. If not, he might be expendable. He's got great hands, though.
I mean, he doesn't have to be Megatron.
Yeah. He's got great hands, so we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But I think those top 6 are a lock, and I'll be interested to see if a 7th one. Steve said, I think Heath is loved in the locker room. Never heard the same things about Dubose or Toure. Chemistry matters. That's fair. That's just one of those things where it could be like a potential tiebreaker, I guess. So we'll see. Let's go. Bryant has the offensive line.
Yeah, so this is a big one. A lot to go over here. I think, honestly, this is the most interesting group in the entire preseason because of what we added in the draft and the versatility that we have already. There can go so many ways with this. You can pretty much dream up endless combinations, but I think the goal is always going to be to get the best 5 on there. Now, depending on who that is, you could see players move. So honestly, we have about 2 players that can probably play every position across the line, possibly 3, depending on what they do with Jordan Morgan. But I kind of want them to let him kind of get his feet set at one position or one side at least, and then go from there. But Zach Tom and Jenkins, you pretty much can play anywhere on the line. That gives them a lot of versatility. And we've already heard that they said, oh, well, Tom is a very good, a Pro Bowl right tackle, an All-Pro guard, and a Hall of Fame center. But we didn't see him at center at all while he was injured. But we haven't got a hint of him at center in the offseason, and they've also haven't cross-trained Myers anywhere. So talking about tackle, so does Tom actually get moved into center, our guard? Early indications say no, but if Jordan Morgan and Walker prove that they're if Jordan Morgan and they stick him at one position, Rasheed Walker, the problem with this is if Rasheed Walker is clearly a top 5, he doesn't have the versatility of other people. He has to be at it, probably left tackle, possibly right tackle. So that he's stuck there. So that now limits Jordan Morgan. If Jordan Morgan proves he's a top 5 and he's a tackle, but he's a top 5 offensive lineman, now do you say, hey, Tom, we need you to move in because Jordan Morgan's clearly one of our top 5, but we need to get him on the field, and he's top 5 when he's at tackle. Tom, do we move you to guard? Now, at that point, you move into who's better, Myers or Sean Ryan at that point? Or does Travis Glover or Jacob Monk come into this conversation? I think Jacob Monk has a chance. So it really is going to be interesting to see if they consider it. So for me, what I'm watching at tackle right now would be Morgan versus Dillard versus Walker. So Dillard's got some play with the top team. He has the experience, but if you go back and watch his tape from last year, it's god-awful. It was not good at all. So really it's going to be, does Morgan play well enough to be in the starting 5? Does he play – is there enough people that play better than Walker to push Walker to the 6th best player on the offensive line? I would be shocked if that was to happen the way Walker played the last half of last year. So then if Jordan Morgan doesn't play well enough, but then is he well enough to be the 6 or is he the 7? I pray that he's at least the 6 because we spent a first-round pick on him, right? So that would be my battle I'm kind of watching on the tackle, and because it really – and I don't know that Glover will be able to force his way into the conversation, but you never know, right? Rasheed Walker is a 7th-round pick, but that's mostly because he humped someone on the middle of the field. But it's the truth.
Never
okay? But so it's going to be very interesting there. Moving on to guard. So Sean Ryan, I think, has his foot up. He's in the lead right now, but I think Morgan does get some cross-training at the position, and I think they do exactly what they did last year, even with Jacob Monk as well. I think there's going to be some rotating there.
Okay, bye, Bryant.
Am I back? Can you hear me?
Yep.
What just happened?
Did
I ever cut off for audio?
No, that was it. I don't know what happened.
Anyways,
real quick.
I just
I thought your power shut off or something.
Anyways, so for guard, it's going to be really interesting. I think there's going to be a rotation like they did last year, what they were doing with Runyon and Ryan. And I think they're going to do that on purpose to get for sure gets Morgan some time, and I think they're going to look to get Monk some time too, because early indications is the goal or the plan or the glide path for Monk would be to eventually take over at center. Now, whether that's later this year or in 2025, we'll see. So right now, what I'm watching kind of at guard is Morgan's in this battle as well. I'd be watching Ryan and Morgan.
Yeah.
God, Simon. So center, moving on to center. Right now it's Myers, right? So they're kind of pigeonholing him. If he turns out to be a top 5, but he can only play center, they kind of put themselves in that position. Like, what do we do now? Or how do we put this line together? Is it possible that they're going to put themselves in the position where they don't get the best 5 on the field? So I think he'll be fine. It's going to be hard to beat him out the early part of the season, especially because really the only people really kind of vying for it would be Zach Tom if they decide to move him. I think he would take it immediately, but right now it's Monk, and if Monk's his main competition, Monk's not going to know all the play calling and how to, Myers got that leg up on him where he's calling the plays at the line and all that kind of stuff. So it depends on how fast Monk can grasp that. Does he grasp it even if he's playing better? Does he grasp that by week 1? Probably not. Does he grasp it by week 10, week 8? Maybe. So that the position I'm kind of watching there, the battle there is with the knowledge that we have right now would be Myers versus Monk, just to kind of see what happens.
So Abram said Jordan Morgan will absolutely not be ready to start a left tackle week 1. If he was, it would be nice to move Sheed to right tackle, and then Tom could move inside. That's kind of the shift in there you're talking about a little bit. Steve asked if has anyone heard if Walker has excelled in the offseason? I think he's being slept on majorly. Honestly, I don't think his offseason stuff matters quite as much until we get into preseason, as much as what he did during the NFL season to the last half of last year. Right.
So the thing I've heard about Rasheed Walker was Matt LaFleur was extremely impressed about the fact that he had nothing to say about them drafting Jordan Morgan. He just came in and kept working. So that tells me, I think Rasheed Walker is probably the type of dude that knows that, he did something stupid in college. I think he had some other little bit of issues too, but his talent at the time we drafted him in the 7th round was higher than a 7th round pick.
I think they were saying like 4th or 5th.
Yeah. And I've seen him even projected higher at other times if that stuff wouldn't have happened. But sure. He's probably, maybe he's not worried. He's like, no, I got this on lock. If you look at his last 8 games of last season, he played extremely well.
Yeah, he did. He's one of the better pass blockers in the league.
Yeah. So I don't think he's overly worried.
Yeah. Adarian said I'd like to keep Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom at tackle, let Jordan Morgan play a guard spot. And I think that's something that's a possibility as well. I think you mentioned that with Ryan and Morgan.
I will say if they put him on the left guard or put him in guard, I would prefer left guard and move Jenkins to right guard because Jordan Morgan's played everything on the left side. You're thinking of right tackle when Jenkins sucked, Jake.
Well, that was also coming off.
I would not. No, I would not. No.
You don't want a right side of the line of Tom and Jenkins?
You don't move Jenkins. You leave Jenkins where he wants to go. You paid him to be a left guard. He wants to be a left guard. You leave him alone.
If that's where he wants to stay, then
he's an alpha on this team. He's an alpha on this team. He could be left guard. He's fine.
He's gonna put a rookie in there, like the 3rd or 4th oldest guy on the team at this point.
That's why he's an alpha.
If you're gonna put a rookie in there, then he better show that he's ready for it at right guard because everything he's played in college is all on the left side of the ball.
If I'm going to not question Green Bay on one thing, it's their development of offensive linemen.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. And that's why I said I think Monk could play in it because we've had pretty good luck with 4th and 5th round draft picks, right, of offensive line. So maybe Monk comes in there and, maybe they put us in a position that we need to trade somebody. That's possible.
I was just going to say, what the bottom line as far as the offensive line it comes down to is this is such a great problem to have. Yeah. That we have guys that we need to try to find a place for, as opposed to being like, we have a place, who are we going to put there? Because that's the conversation the Bears are having.
Yeah, but think about it. So this is all hyperbole, but if Jordan Morgan does legitimately beat out Rasheed Walker, and someone comes and offers you a 3rd round draft pick for Rasheed Walker, are you saying, no, I want him as my 6th tackle, or maybe even a 2nd? No, I want him as my 6th tackle, or no, you know what, I'll take that value. That puts you in an interesting position. It also depends on what's behind them, if they really do like Dillard, if they think it was just a real bad season for him last year. But they're in this is a good problem to have.
I think they have some other interesting tackle prospects too. Like Caleb Jones has been with us going into his third
It's
year.
now or never for Caleb
Luke
Jones.
Tenuta,
Luke Tenuta, they like
Gene
that
Telfer. He hurt himself, I think, last year. I think they have some interesting they have some interesting prospects behind him.
So, and they
I think
picked
a
up
lot of
more,
depth.
so like Glover and Monk are guys you're talking about too.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
Steve
then,
Tillard is a great depth piece. Honestly, if somebody offers me a second or third round pick for Rasheed Walker, I'm probably
taking
saying
it.
yes.
Yeah, I'd take that.
I'm taking that 100%.
Okay.
But it might come right back to bite you because look how good he looked last year. So
Yeah, but he's also got to get paid. So
yeah,
I'll take
Yeah.
a
And I
third
mean,
round pick.
If you're looking at a 7th round guy and you'd be like, okay, we picked this guy in the 7th round and 2 years later we turn him into a third.
yeah, and you don't even know what Sean Ryan's going to bring, right? Sean Ryan took a huge step because of all the crap that happened with him for his first year as a second year. If he takes another step that size, he might be cemented as the right guard.
He was towards the end of the year, he was splitting almost 50-50 with John Runyon Jr. So
yeah, so it's going to be really interesting.
yeah, definitely a lot of guys to watch in the
This is why I
preseason.
said this is a very, very they might go and essentially have the same starting lineup next game one, which all I'll say is going into week one against the Eagles, who have a very, very stout defensive line, you better feel 100% confident you have the right combination out there.
Yeah, definitely be interesting.
Yeah,
okay, so let's move from offense to defense, and let's go. I have the defensive line, and I kind of have them split between defensive linemen and defensive ends. So for the defensive line, I just put Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, Jonathan Ford, and Spencer Wade. And then for the defensive ends, Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, Kingsley Enagbare, Brenton Cox, Deslin Alexander, and then Kenneth Odemegwu.
The defensive linemen.
They're mixed. Some of them are DMs, some of them are D-line. However you want to classify them. I'm not gonna have a fist fight with you in Alaska and give you a face wash in the snow over it.
There's no snow right now.
So the two positional quote unquote battles I'm watching, it's less going to be battles and more going to be like end of the roster watch. Two players that I'm looking to see if they make the roster are going to be Jonathan Ford and Brenton Cox. Going to the 4-3, they're going to be using more defensive linemen, defensive ends. So I'm wondering how that affects the roster with carrying fewer linebackers.
Honestly, the way they talked about Brenton Cox in this offseason, I feel like he's a lock. They were talking about him in the backfield every play. I'm telling you, go back and read it.
He's interesting. He's an interesting prospect.
Lock is like
blowing everything up.
So,
but he could be one of those people that changes once you put the pads on. But still,
Steve said he heard a stat that Wyatt had similar pressure numbers to Jeffrey Simmons with far fewer reps. Devontae Wyatt took a pretty strong second-year leap last year.
He looked good last year.
He was really good, and
I don't think Kenny Clark so far in his career. So,
yeah, I don't think enough people talked about him.
I agree.
About Devontae Wyatt last year. Okay, so moving from defensive line / linebacker or defensive ends to the linebackers, Jake's going to talk about linebackers.
All right, so I wanted to do this a little bit differently because we were used to like middle linebacker and outside linebacker with the 3-4 for the last several years, right? So now I wanted to talk about the 4-3 linebackers, and they have names. So for the middle linebacker, that's called the Mike. The Mike linebacker, the definition is they're known as the quarterback of the defense. They're really the guys that take away the middle of the field, and they're the guys that have to be able to cover tight ends and stuff. They're the most pure linebacker. So they also make the checks. They call the plays. So I wanted to write this down in a definition form for like somebody who has never watched football. You look at the screen, you're like, that guy's in the middle. Okay, that's the Mike linebacker. If you want to see a really good one, I'm sorry to say, go watch the San Francisco 49ers because Fred Warner
he's fantastic.
One of the best Mike linebackers I've ever seen in my entire life.
Him
and Luke Kuechly, studs.
Yeah, he was great too. And from the Yang to Wyatt's Yang is Kenny Clark.
Yeah.
Those two will be on the interior together.
To Wyatt's Yang or Yang?
Settle down, brother.
I didn't type it.
Sam and Ron are going crazy in the comments right now, bro.
He said
they are out of pocket. I'm just going to say that right now, okay? I'm going to get refocused now, okay? Because you guys are going crazy in the comments. So, Jesus. So the middle linebackers for the Packers, when I looked up the depth chart, I looked up on multiple sites, Packers.com, ESPN, CBS Sports, and they have Edgerrin Cooper and Eric Wilson as the top two guys for that Mike linebacker spot. Now, I thought that was very, very interesting for Edgerrin Cooper to be in the Mike linebacker spot. But when you really think about it and you look at his coverage skills and his ability to tackle the ball handler, I think he is the most pure linebacker on this roster when you really think about it. So now you get to the will linebacker or the weak side, right? So when you think of the weak side of the defense, you think of the weak side of the field. So the tight end, wherever the tight end goes, that's a strong side of the field. So the will linebacker is a guy that's somebody not very good at getting over blocks. He's usually your most athletic guy. He can use his speed and play rec to track down ball handlers. Who do you think of on this roster as a linebacker when you think of a guy who's super athletic and not good at getting off blocks? Quay Walker. Not very good at getting off blocks. We can call it what it is. Super athlete. He can run with anybody in this league at the linebacker position. I'm sorry.
Darian said I feel like he should take a big leap in the scheme this year. He has to be consistent in the defensive play.
Bro, him as the will linebacker is going to be filthy. 6'4", chasing people down. He doesn't have to worry about
chase down Justin Fields last year. So, I mean.
I'm saying, dude, he's going to be a monster at the will linebacker. Christian Young and Keyshawn Banks are two rookies that are on the back end of the depth chart that are going to be looking to fill the depth behind Quay Walker at that will linebacker spot. But hopefully Quay stays healthy and he takes another leap because he took a very big maturity leap from year 1 to year 2. Hopefully he takes a production leap to year 3. So now you get to the Sam or the strong side linebacker, and there are people that are probably your best run defenders. They're good at getting off blocks, and they are not afraid to stick their nose in there. And the guy that sticks out to you on this roster is Isaiah McDuffie, and he was very good for us last year, filling in for Campbell and Walker when they were out. He had 86 total tackles, 56 solo tackles. Also a guy that has to be able to chip and block, cover tight ends and running backs, which I think McDuffie could probably take a step up in his game with that, but he is familiar with our defensive coordinator, just saying. So there's behind him is Tyron Hopper, a draft pick this year, guy who's super athletic. He was looked at as a guy not very good at getting off blocks, but he has some really great pass rush potential from that linebacker spot on the strong side of the field. So if you can attack that with a Tyron Hopper's athleticism and have Isaiah McDuffie just be the solid guy that gets the tackles on the running backs, I think we have something to work with. We have a good base at linebacker.
Needs to learn to tackle.
This is
which I know they're working on him with.
He does need to learn to tackle.
So my question
brought up an interesting.
I have a question for you. Do you think early in the season, until Edgerrin and Cooper gets comfortable, they could still have Quay at Mike and Edgerrin at weak side?
I think, honestly, if you're thinking 4-3, I think that Quay is much better as the will linebacker. He does not do good at getting off blocks, and he is a super athlete. But
do you think Cooper will be ready to call defense, or do you think they might put it back at McKinney?
That's the question Ron asked. Ron asked McKinney could wear the dot to free up a linebacker rotation. He wore it last year.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is just like kind of a bold prediction. I think you're going to have Preston Smith be the guy because everybody listens when he talks.
I'm not opposed to that at all. He's a consistent veteran that you know is going to be on the field.
It's where he lines up. He might have trouble signaling to other people. Like he'll be on the line where cornerbacks and stuff might not be able to see him. You want someone that everyone can see.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I'm down for McKinney to have it too. Totally,
I'm down for McKinney to have it too. He and obviously at safety, you have the view of everything, right? Because you're the farthest back. So I think that could be something that could work really well. Plus, he's a stand-up guy and an all-pro guy, talent-wise. So he definitely.
Are you guys excited about our versatility yet? I just cannot wait.
Oh, man.
Steve said it's always some dark horse UDFA that makes the roster. Wouldn't be surprised if a linebacker does that this year.
You know what? I was going to bring up Christian Welch. He's a very interesting guy. I'm being serious. He's a very
I'm laughing at
dude,
his comment about Wyatt.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like he's just off the shrimping boat.
Sounds like the guy
giving us shit about the Wisconsin accents. Bubba Gump off the shrimp boat.
Yeah, it would be. I agree, David. But I was just thinking as like kind of a respect thing to have Preston do it because everybody listens to Preston. He's one of the smartest guys in the field at all time. Is my opinion.
Anyways,
give him a captain.
You were saying Christian Welch.
Yeah, he really was just a special teams guy last year, but with the new scheme, maybe he's a guy that could take a jump in the defense too. I thought he was interesting. Plus, it'd be
Didn't
weird
Eric
to see
Wilson play a 4-3 with Minnesota?
What's
Or
that?
3-4, excuse me.
What'd you say?
Didn't Eric Wilson play in the scheme with
Yeah,
Minnesota?
he did. He did. That's why he's also at Mike. So he has experience as a 4-3 linebacker already. So
I like him as a lot as a backup linebacker.
yeah, I think he just needs to be like a defensive substitution and get off special teams.
Yep.
Now that's just my opinion. We have enough guys that can play special teams.
With Christian Welch, that's another guy. Like they were talking about going into the draft and coming out of the draft that they're looking for a lot of linebacker-sized players to use also with special teams. So I definitely think Christian Welch has a spot on the team.
Agreed.
Darian said if Wyatt does a better job on run defense and run recognition, he'll stand out more. I think that's something that the 4-3 can help him. The Packers played a lot of 2-down lineman sets last year.
Yeah.
Which it makes it really hard to make standout plays when you're blocking 2 on 5.
Yep.
Okay. Jake, anything else you wanted to say on linebackers?
It's going to be a tougher transition than people realize. I'm just going to tell you that. First couple of weeks might be a little weird for people. Quay Walker's never played in this defense. Adrian Cooper obviously is a rookie. So guys like Eric Wilson might get a lot of snaps in the first couple of weeks because they have experience.
Good thing we're not playing a really good running team week 1.
Yeah.
David said Wyatt was super underrated overall, but he had no chance in the scheme. That's part of what it is.
Yeah, they play a much better technique for Wyatt's play style. And Kenny Clark just fits into every play style.
You ready for everyone to
just a
lose their
monster.
mind after the run game week 1 if we still can't stop the run.
That's why I'm
You might
telling
as well
people to
just
be
brace
patient.
yourself for that comment. The Packers give a 112-yard run and be like, "Whoa, here we go!" And,
against Barkley and Hurts. Yeah, I'm sure that won't happen at all.
yeah. David said, "I think 6 to 8 weeks before it gels, Eagles could be bad." I think the Packers match up really well with the Eagles, personally.
I don't like the Eagles' offseason wasn't great, in my opinion. Outside of adding Saquon Barkley, they lost a lot of pieces, and they took like a bad nosedive at the end of last year. And then they have 2 new coordinators too.
Almost fired their head coach.
Yeah.
Rodden's already getting the fire halfway train going. Good thing he spelled it wrong. That's very fitting. That's how that'll go. I don't know if he's spelled that on purpose, but the people that'll be crying for him to be fired in the first half of the first game, we'll definitely spell it wrong.
I already started it a week after.
That's a great call up by Steve too. I didn't even think about that.
Steve's thinking what I'm thinking.
Kelsey.
Yeah.
David said 2 top wide receivers, 2 top runners, good tight end, good O-line.
Good thing they have an average quarterback.
Ron said, oops. You could have just played it off like you were doing it on purpose, Ron. We wouldn't have known any better. That would have fitted well.
Yeah, we gave you credit for it, man. Just lie.
Okay. All right, Simon, let's go through the secondary.
I think the Packers obviously used a lot of their offseason capital to really shore up the safety room. Bringing in Xavier McKinney, like we already talked about. And when we did our, free agent wish list, it was like our clear number 1 guy that we wanted. So it's good to see them shell out a lot of money to bring in the best safety on the market. And then obviously utilizing 3 draft picks, taking Javon Bullard in the 2nd, Evan Williams in the 4th, and Katana Oladapo in the 5th. We haven't seen any of Oladapo because of his broken toe during the combine week. So I'm really excited to see what he's able to bring to the table. I really like his size and play. And then returning last year's 7th-round pick, Anthony Johnson Jr., UDFA's Benny Sapp, and then Zane Anderson returning as a special teams player. And then they also added a 2nd-year player, Tyler Cole, to the room as well. As for the cornerbacks, I think this is a group where I expected them to do a little something, and they really didn't address it that much. They returned a lot of the same players last year. Obviously, Jair Alexander. I'm sorry. Am I really not that loud? My mic's a little bit away. I didn't want to scream in the mic. Sorry. Good. I had it a little bit further away. Obviously, Jair Alexander returning headlines the group. And then Keyshawn Nixon's got another contract in the offseason. former first-round pick Eric Stokes coming off of his injury-riddled last couple seasons, and then standout Carrington Valentine, 7th-round pick from last year. They also re-signed Corey Ballantyne, brought back Zion Gilbert and Robert Rochelle, and then really they only added 7th-round pick Kalen King. He was someone that I think a lot of people agreed that it just kind of had a down year in college this year due to I don't know, maybe some mental stuff on his game. But he was projected, like if you go look at a lot of the early projections for the draft, like he was like a day 2 guy. So getting him in the second, I think the Packers are willing to easily take that gamble. And then they added a second-year player, Gamon Green, who was a former UDFA for the New York Giants. But it seems like the Packers really like this cornerback group. Like, I think it'll be interesting to see who nails down that number 2 cornerbacks spot between Eric Stokes and Carrington Valentine. And also, I'm interested to see the slot snaps too, because I think like Javon Bullard might be able to take a lot of those nickelback kind of spots, but also I think there's some interesting guys like Evan Williams who could do it too.
Do you think
a lot of those safeties had those slot snaps? Everybody seems to be echoing the same thing. David said if Stokes returned to form, we get a good boost. Steve said if Stokes stays relatively healthy, I expect a bounce-back season in this tailor-made scheme. Darian said I'm hoping Eric Stokes stays healthy and divert back to what he was during his rookie year as he's in a make-or-break year, which is something that Cody said earlier as well.
Do you think the loss of Preston Smith out of the cornerback room will hurt us?
No, I think
he'll move
to safety only when he's covering Justin Jefferson.
Put him at safety.
I wish he would have stayed away.
He was great against Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
He shut down Justin Jefferson too.
So as far as corners go, I think it would be interesting to see if we get some packages that have Jair Alexander, Carrington Valentine, and Eric Stokes on the field at the same time.
Yeah. You know, Corey Ballantyne actually had a really good year last year too.
Really
when
did.
Our top 2 guys went out, he ended up playing like all right.
Yeah.
And spot snaps.
Brown said Bullard is a natural slot guy. Will push Nixon pretty hard. I mean, iron sharpens iron. So I mean, if Bullard can learn from Nixon too, I mean,
yeah, Bullard might be the best, at strong safety at this point in time too, though. So that's kind of the conversation. But what I'm going to say is, how we always talk about offensive line, you have to run the ball so they stay aggressive. I'm very interested to see if these cornerbacks, as they talk a lot, we heard about Carrington Valentine last year. He talked quite a bit. We know Jair Alexander likes to mix it up. It'll be interesting to see how much more aggressive these guys are, as Halfley looks to be a guy that with a little bit of an edge and allow these guys a little bit more freedom to see if we can get some more pass breakups, some more funky, tip interceptions and stuff like that with all the athletes we have and the speed we have on defense now. I think we're in for a big year from the DBs, man.
But Halfley wants to play aggressive too.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy, dude. And Bullard's a talker too.
Darian said, I'm also intrigued to see what Valentine looks like with the weight he's put on this year.
Be interesting. I think you learned a lot last year. I'll say that.
All righty. So we're going to end it on special teams. Bryant is going to go through the special teams roster and what he's thinking about with this as well.
So for the first one, we'll talk about kickers. We already seen the one get cut. I really think this battle is down really to between Joseph and Carlson.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, and I think Carlson Anders is in the lead right now. Probably mostly because he was a draft pick last year, and he did have a strong offseason, right? Everything you're reading was him. He was making most of the kicks. He made the ones under pressure, but Joseph kind of came on strong towards the end, and he was doing the same thing. So I do wonder, it's going to be interesting to see the new kickoff rule, how much it impacts this decision. If Anders cannot kick the ball in between the 0 and 20, he's booting it out or something like that, or has accuracy issues with that, you could see him lose that position because of that. Or if Joseph is just more pinpoint with that, and they think that it's going to have that much of an impact. But overall, I think Joseph would have to either really, really outperform and during training camp, or for Carlson to kind of take a nosedive a little bit in training camp for him to lose that position. So obviously the battle we're watching is between those two.
let me ask you a question before you move on quick. Just a question that I think is going to be asked in general. Do you see any avenue where Joseph and Carlson both make the roster?
I don't, because I think roster positions are too valuable to try to carry 2 kickers.
Yep, totally fair.
We're
Just
already
a question
talking
that I
about a
kinda thought
6th or
would be-
7th wide receiver. You have running backs that, I mean,
Quarterback.
Emmanuel Wilson
maybe.
showed flashes last year. So if you're trying to carry 4 running backs, do you carry a kicker over them? Probably not. So I don't see that avenue. Now, so for punter, there's no competition. That Whelan won that competition. There was times last year that we literally put him in our 3 stars because of how well he performed. Granted, that means we performed poorly, but there was times he was pinning people way back, hitting booming punts.
There's no netting over 45.
He absolutely earned the right not to have competition. We'll jump over to long snapper. That's between Matt Orzlich and your guys, Peter Bowden. I think
Peter Bowden.
I think Peter Bowden will win that one. It's not much. We say not much. We would all love this amount of money, but it's a $400,000 difference if they go with Bowden over Matt because of the years in service. And it's not like Matt Orzlich had a fantastic year last year. He wasn't terrible.
He was bad last year.
Yeah, there was some.
He wasn't good.
There were some snaps that were pretty iffy at best. So I think Peter Bowden.
Oh, just blame the kicker. Kicker.
I think Peter Bowden will win that competition. Now, kick returner is where it gets really, really interesting. There's a rule that I didn't bring up that changes a lot of things. I must have overlooked it, but I went back and read it while we were talking or whatever. The kick returners can move prior to and during the kick. So that means they can be rotating and stuff. So if they try it, it might be like a kind of a roulette, right? Like, do I kick it where Keyshawn is standing now, or do I kick it away from him knowing that they might rotate as soon as I start running up to kick this ball?
Interesting.
So it's going to be really interesting with there. So I think we all can 100% agree that one of the kick returners back will be Keyshawn.
Yeah.
I would say 80-90% positivity that the other one will be Jaden Reed.
Yeah. I think it's going to be
I know we don't want him to get hurt.
I agree.
But he's bulky. It's not the same kick returns. You got to remember that, Jake. They're not going to be full. They're going to get tackled and stuff, but it's not going to be full on speed the whole time. You know what I mean? Anymore. And you're not going to like the other people. I think our options then too. The third option I think is Marshawn Lloyd is what we're looking at. He's got that straight line speed. He can get through the hole. So I think he could be a very interesting play back there. And then the other ones I said was maybe Javon Bullard, depending. I don't know if he's return kicks, but you need someone with sure hands. And then honestly, the other one I said, Christian Watson. Could you imagine if you put Christian Watson in the next? I know you don't like it, but you talk about those end rounds and all that kind of stuff. That's a lot of speed on the field. I know you don't want to.
The other guy you put out there instead of Christian Watson is Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs has punt return experience from college.
Watson does. So, but this is where I think Marshawn Lloyd could honestly find a niche there for this year, is because he can. Remember earlier when I said it, I feel like it's going to be a lot more like sealing and like doing running plays. This is where they might want to put. Keyshawn is already good at that. He's got great vision and moves. That's where you might be like, Lloyd might be a good option back there because he's used to finding the hole and hitting it. Or Josh Jacobs even, to be honest. But
I was going to go in the other direction. If Lloyd is in preseason and training camp carving a role out for himself on the offense, does that maybe open up a potential for Emmanuel Wilson to make some noise on special teams?
And Emmanuel Wilson had some speed too. So
he's got. We saw him hurdle dudes last year at some points too. So
it's going to be interesting. They got a lot of options back there. And maybe that Watson isn't the permanent guy back there, but you never know. They might throw someone out there and they just might start running some of these trick plays and stuff. You know what I mean? I feel like they should have a really opportunity to kind of lead the way in being innovative and, you so often see people. I mean, Matt LaFleur is already really good on offense, but you so often see where we'll copy plays like that one to Luke Musgrave in the middle or whatever that beat us one game. And we took that play and we use that same play where it's a fake pitch and then touchdown. You know what play I'm talking about. It was against the Rams. I think we used it. So maybe we carve out to where Basaccia and Matt LaFleur put their head together and be like, what can we do that really kind of throws some people off here? So
if we're looking at like end of the roster guys as well that could potentially sneak on if they form a special teams role, Grant Dubose is another guy who had speed coming out of college as
Martin
well.
Morituri has a lot of speed, but so it's going to be really interesting. I'm really excited to watch this in the preseason. It's kind of
versatility is going to play a big role on who makes like the last 5 or 10 roster spots.
Yeah.
Yep. I have an interesting proposition now that I learned that the kick returner can move. Do you just put somebody back there with Keyshawn Nixon that is better at blocking and just let Keyshawn just be
exactly
the man driving
possibly as long as if they can get to the ball? That's the big thing, right? You don't want to put someone out there that's where maybe a Marshawn Lloyd does make sense because they can take the ball if they need to, but they might also be better at blocking. You know what I mean? So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. Or you mentioned Romeo Dobbs or Christian Watson. Those dudes are really good at blocking wide receivers.
I'm going to be honest with you. I went to A.J. Dillon. This is going to sound crazy, but he blocked for for Aaron Jones a couple of times last year as a lead blocker, and he was demolishing people.
Yeah, as long as he's okay with him returning a ball if it gets kicked to him.
He has experience with the ball in his hands too. He's a pretty sure
the ball. Cody said have 11 offensive linemen out there on kickoffs.
I would bet my house that A.J. Dillon has 0% chance to house one, and you're probably not getting much past the 20 to 30. So there's a risk in that, but if he can block, then yeah, you're putting at that point. If everyone gets their blocks off, it's Keyshawn Nixon versus a kicker.
Yeah, dude.
You know what I mean? Well, I know that's not going to happen. People will get through blocks and stuff like that, but it's really going to be interesting to see. Now, do they put more offensive linemen between the 30-35? Or are they doing their more athletic tight ends? Who are they putting there? You know what I mean? So. Do they put Royce Newman so we can all shoot ourselves? I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. All right.
Turnstile himself.
So now that we've gone through the whole roster, these are the preseason rosters. I want to say August 10th, we are going to do a free watch party. It's not going to be part of our Patreon watch parties. We're going to do a free one for Packers Broncos on August 10th. So we're going to have that. We're going to be giving the options starting in September for Packers games to be part of our Patreon voting watch parties. If you are subscribed to us on Patreon, you get to vote for the games that we do the watch parties for. We do our own 30-minute pregame show, and we do a short post-game show afterwards for the patrons that are signed up on Patreon, and you guys get to pick the games that we cover for the following month. So check us out on Patreon. Starting next month in August, you will be able to vote for Packer games, which start in September, which does not feel like it's that far away when you put it that way. No. So August 10th will be a free one, so you'll be able to get a preview to see if that's something you guys are interested in subscribing to us for. It's just one of those things where we're doing extra content to try to make some money for the show so we can get to a point where we can put more of our time into the show and potentially make it into a full-time job where we can then put more into it and we can do more watch parties and things of that nature and do more shows and have more conversations like these, which we appreciate everybody commenting on here. It's awesome that we get all these comments and people watching live through the whole thing. Ron, I appreciate it. How often do we do one? That's a good question. Our next Packers show, besides the watch party that we're going to do on the 10th, is going to be August 20th. That's right, the 20th?
Yep.
Yes.
And then the 27th.
Yes.
So
those will be every week through the season.
And then the 3rd.
Right before the opener in Brazil. So the 20th is going to be our roster preview, and then our 27th is going to be our stat projections show and bold predictions. It's going to be on the 20th, actually. But the 20th and the 27th are going to be our next two Packer shows for August, in addition to the watch party on the 10th. So
yeah, we take some time off during the off season, but during season it's weekly.
Yep.
Well, then we also go live every Wednesday.
After that, it'll be every Tuesday, 8 o'clock, live. All the shows are live, and then you can listen to them throughout the week if you can't catch it live. But those will be Tuesdays at 8 o'clock throughout the entire season from August 20th until the week after the Super Bowl when the Packers are hoisting the Lombardi again. So so we'll be live every Tuesday from there. Plus, then we don't have to finagle with the Thursday night schedules and stuff like that. We're in between Sunday and Thursday every week. So kind of made it a little bit easier for scheduling and things of that nature as well. But again, thank you everybody for watching live the whole time, commenting along, asking awesome questions. And we hope to see you guys on August 10th. And Jake and I will be live tomorrow talking Brewers. So we'll see you then for that as well. And Simon and Bryant, we'll see you guys soon.
Yes. And I'll be calm during the preseason game, I promise.
I wouldn't bet on
All right,
it. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Go Pack Out.